Welcome everybody. We're going to look at some more complicated examples to do with proportional reasoning and double number lines. So the first one is that I have a ratio of red to black, so it might be litres of paint, it might be whatever it happens to be, or red to blue, it doesn't matter. But I do know that for every 3 reds I have 2 blues, and I would like to know if I had 7 reds, how many blues would I need? So I have to say to myself, which side do I know both things on? I know that on the left-hand side. So I'm going to work out what 1 red is. And I'm going to start at the I'm going to start at the 3 because I know both of those numbers there. I can't actually start at the 7. I have to start at the 3. So let me just get a different colour. How does 3 reds become 1 red? Well, I'd have to divide by 3. If I know what 1 red is worth, could I work out what 7 reds are worth? Yes, I can. I'd have to multiply by 7. So those 2 arrows are going to happen on this side as well in the exact same direction. So I'm going to put those in. And that will allow me to say that x equals, now let's follow those arrows back because that's where I started, where I knew everything. And I did 2. Now what happened to that 2? It was divided by 3. And then multiplied by 7. So I use the colours for the kids to see which function I'm doing. So I would let them use a calculator or whatever they want to do to work that out, and they would get 4.67. So whatever I'm mixing, or then I would need 4.67 blues of that, whatever it happens to be. So let's have a look at the next example. 67% as a fraction. So let's have a look. 67%, it means that it has to be on this right-hand side. So 67 has to be on this side because it's a percentage, and I'd like to know what number it is. I do know that 100% is going to be 1. And so now I say to myself, which side do I start on, the left or on the right? Well, I have to start on the right-hand side because that's where I know both things. I'm going to put a 1 there. I say to myself, do I start at the 100? Do I start at the 67? Where do I know both things? I know both things at the 100. How does 100% become 1%? But I'd have to divide by 100. If I know what 1% is, could I work out 67%? Absolutely I could. I could multiply that 1% by 67, and I would do the same thing on the other side. So that would tell me that my number equals, now let's follow those arrows backwards. What did I start with? 1. What did I do to it? I divided it by 100, and then I multiplied it by 67. And that would give me 67 hundredths. And that, written as a decimal, is 67 hundredths. So if I write it as a fraction, I can write it as 67 out of 100. If I write it as a decimal, I can write it as 67 hundredths. So I can write it either way. Let's have a look at 2.5%. These tend to be a bit tricky for students. So 2.5%. Now you have to think, it's going to go on the left or on the right. Is it a number or is it a percent? It's actually a percent. So I'm going to write 2.5 on this side. I could have written 2.5 as a fraction. It doesn't matter. But I'd like to know what that is as a number. And yet again, I know that 1 is 100%. The whole thing. So now I would like to know, do I start on the left or do I start on the right? Which side do I know both things? I know both things on the right-hand side. So do I start at the 2.5 where I don't know stuff? Or do I start at the 100 where I know both things? I start at the 100. So how does 100% become 1%? Well, it's a divide by 100. If I know 1%, excuse me, could I work out what 2.5% is? Absolutely I can, because I'd multiply by 2.5. So that means I need to do the same thing over here and divide by 100 and then multiply by 2.5. So my number is going to equal, where do I start? Well, let's go follow those arrows backwards. I started at the 1. What did I do to it? I divided it by 100 and then I multiplied by 2.5. So now, oh, sorry, wrong colour. So now I know that my number is 2.5 divided by 100, which is, I could write it as 25 over 1,000, and I could write it as 25 thousandths. So either way, if I want to write it as a fraction or as a decimal, I could write it like that. Let's have a look at another couple of examples. If I've got 32 out of 40 on a test score, what is that as a percentage? Well, if I scored 100%, what would I have scored? How many marks would I have earned? I would have scored 40 marks. I scored 32, and I would like to know what 32 marks is as a percentage. So now let's see, I've got to get a 1 somewhere here. So is it on the side where I know both things, or is it on the side where I don't know stuff? It's on the side where I know both things. So I'm going to work out what 1 mark is worth. Sorry. Let me try that again. So I want to work out what 1 mark is worth. So how does 40 marks become 1 mark? It's a divide by 40. And if I know what 1 mark is, could I work out what 32 marks are worth? Absolutely. 1 mark times 32 would tell me how much a 32 marks would be. So I'll put those same things on this side. Divide by 40 times by 32. So now my percentage equals, let's follow those arrows backwards. Where did I start? 100. What did I do to it? Oh, sorry. Still getting used to this software. I divided it by 40. And then I multiplied it by 32. Now, you can put that in your calculator and you can type that straight in, 100 divided by 40 multiplied by 32. Or you can cancel. If I say how many 10s are in 40, there are 4. How many 10s in 100, there are 10. But I also know that how many 4s are in 32, there are 1 lot of 4 in 4, but there are 8 in there, and that gives me 80%. So whichever way you do that, it doesn't matter. But now you know that 32 marks is worth 80%. A score of 32 marks out of 40 is worth 32%. If I said to you, you wanted to score 95% on this test, right? So it's still out of 40, but you wanted to score 95%. What mark would you need to get? So what mark would you need to score if you wanted to get 95% on the test? So let's have a look at that. So this time I look and I say, has to be the one on the right-hand side because that's where I know both of these numbers. Where do I start? I have to start at this level of the 40 and the 100 because that's where I know both things. So if I know 100% is 40 marks, can I work out what 1% is? You betcha. Divide by 100. And if I know what 1% is, could I work out what 95% is? Absolutely. And I could do that. So 1 times 95 is 95. I'm going to put those same arrows in here. with the right colours. Divide by 100, multiply by 95. This is the scale factor part of proportional reasoning. So my mark is going to be, let's follow those arrows backwards. Where did I start? Well, I started with 40 marks. I divided them by 100 and then I multiplied by 95. And that gives me, I worked it out, 38 marks. It's actually 9.5 times 4 because I can cancel that and say that that's 9.5 times 4, which is 38 marks. So I know that if I wanted to score 95%, I would have to have 38 marks. So that's how I would do that one. So I just wanted to show you how flexible those double number lines are to actually get everything that you want to be able to do with them. So let's think, you're at work and you get 5 days a week you work and 2 days you get off. What percentage is that? So say Saturday and Sunday out of a 7-day working week. So this might be days. So 7 days is 100%, and you'd like to know what 2 days is. So in this case, 2/7, the fraction 2/7, a whole would be 7/7. And I've only got 2 of them, and I'd like to know what percentage that is. So again, I say, I know both things on this time on the left-hand side, so that must be where my 1 is, and I know both things at the 7 and the 100, so that's where I must start. So how does 7 days become 1 day? Well, I must divide by 7. And if I know what 1 day is as a percentage, could I work out what 2 days is? Absolutely, I could. I could multiply by 2. So I'll do the same here. And that would tell me that my percentage is, let's follow those arrows backwards. It's going to be 100. What did I do to it? I divided it by 7 and then I multiplied by 2. And that gives me 28.6% when I don't scroll off the page. Let's just scroll back. Sorry about that. Notice that I know that it's a percent because it's on the percentage side. So it really does structure your thinking. Now let's have a look. I've scrolled just a smidgy too far there. So now I'm looking at 1500ths as a percentage. So 1500ths, does it have a percent side after it? No, it doesn't. So it must be on this side, 1500ths. And I know that 1 is 100%. And this is the percent that I'd like to know about. So I say to myself, which side do I know both numbers on? Oh, I don't even need to do that. Look at how easy that is. Watch this. Can I just say to myself, how does 0.15, 1500ths, come from 1? Well, I could just go times 0.15, couldn't I? Yeah? And so I'm going to do exactly the same here. So if there's an easy way to get around it, do it. If you can see, there's some nice numbers in there. You don't have to always go back to the 1. So let's have a look here. So 1 times 0.15 times 1500ths is 1500ths. So my percentage is 100. What did I do to it? Sorry about that. So my percentage is 100 multiplied by 0.15, 1500ths, and that will give me 15%. So that tells me that 1500ths is 15%, which is nice to know. And I never said to a student, divide by 100, multiply by 100, any of those things that we just tell them than they're supposed to remember.